Hello everybody and welcome back to the Scrapyard. I am your host Nathan Realbolder, joined here by Taylor.
Hi.
And Xavier.
This is the library edition of the Scrapyard.
Unfortunately, there were large spiders up in the room we normally record in, so we're in a room full of sleeping people.
Gang,
or
gang.
a house full of sleeping people.
Gang gang.
If the audio is different, we apologize. What we won't apologize for is that this has been the surprise 4-team episode that you've been waiting for all preseason. Today we are talking about the Chinese team, so that'll be Chengdu, Guangzhou, Huangzhou, and Shanghai. Before we get into it, I wanted to remind you, if you want to find us on social media, you can do that on Instagram or Twitter at ScrapyardMedia. Additionally, you can play games with us on Xbox or Steam at ScrapyardMedia. And finally, don't forget, you can listen to us anywhere you listen to podcasts, especially where you're listening right now at ScrapyardMedia. Feel free to check out our YouTube for some fun content that's been posted there recently. Roll intro. Okay, let's get right into it, starting with the Chengdu Hunters. They have a 13-15 record with a 55, Execute Order 66, and 1 map record.
They cut Yang Xiaolong and Jikrin, and they signed Leave.
Yeah, that's about it. For a Chinese team, they were very active. I think the moves make some sense. I think signing Leave is a gigantic upgrade over Yang Xiaolong. So they played at that Shanghai Masters thing, and Chengdu 3-0'd the Guangzhou Charge, and they got 4-0'd by Shanghai because Shanghai's Shanghai. However, Chengdu looked good, and I think a big part of why Chengdu looked really good is because of Leave. Leave made a gigantic impression on people that might not have watched Leave perform, and the hype that was surrounding his signing when it very first happened was justified because he is a fucking monster. And I think it's really meaningful signing because a lot of the times this team has just been a Meng for sure, but also Jinmu just being insane and putting up like these dazzling plays and really being the best player in the game at certain points. However, Jinmu has basically been partnered with people kind of by committee. You know, it's like, oh, Jinmu Yang Xiaolong, Jinmu Bacon Jack. And there hasn't really been a true running mate for Jinmu. And the story of this offseason is a lot of these DPS that went crazy last season are finally getting running mates. Side player has Yaki now, Erster has Edison, and I think that this is another example of Jinmu getting some genuine help with Leave. And so I like the fact that you have Jinmu and Leave as your DPS core, and it's two people that are nuts on any hero. Then, if you need him, you have Bacon Jack. And it's not Bacon Jack gets play because Yang Xiaolong kind of sucks this week, and we want to try something different.
Right.
So I genuinely enjoy the fact that they signed Leave and made a significant upgrade.
Yeah, and I have to say something going over these weeks and weeks of talking about teams and their signings. It looks like this season they're taking more of a like let's make sure we have duo and duo and duo with all their kind of classes, or at least one in the tank category, at least a duo in like the DPS category. Not all supports have a like duo going into the season, but I do think it's nice that we have now solid duos going into the work, as you said.
Yeah, and they do have really good mainstays still. I think Elsa is a big example of that. Elsa played, I think, every single game. And if I'm not completely mistaken, every single map for this team. And same with Yveltal, where he is just a very good support. And I think you do have a good core. You have Kyo and Yveltal, who basically played every map last season. So you have continuity there. You have Elsa, who played every single map and was good. And then you have a Meng, obviously,
Right.
who feels like a make or break thing. But what I really like about a Meng right now is it is worrying because a Meng isn't your be-all, end-all main tank. And I think having, when they signed Jikrin, the theory was if a Meng is subpar on certain heroes, he can come in and alleviate a Meng from having to play like a Meng does, but on a hero he's not as good at, which is detrimental to your team.
Mm-hmm.
But Wrecking Ball is meta right now. And a Meng is going to feast, because he is still the best Wrecking Ball until he's taken off that throne.
Right.
And with, Wrecking Ball being meta, I think this is perfect time for him to really show out.
Yeah, and the Chengdu Hunters have always been that, that team where we used to call them, they only bully on bad teams. But I generally think going into this year, especially now having a solid duo, that they're not just going to bully on bad teams, they're going to bully on and surprise some of the better teams. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure there was a couple games where they, shook the shock and even let the Titans run for their money.
Yeah.
They never, defeated them, but they at least, there was
pushed
moments where
hard.
you saw them, both of those teams kind of be like, oh, wait, what?
But they did beat the Shock, but obviously, they didn't beat Super Saiyan Shock.
Yeah. They beat early stage Shock, so it'll be fun seeing how far they go.
And another thing with Chengdu is, still looking at this roster, it is largely the same, and I still think they are slotted for that 13, 15 type win level.
Mm-hmm.
13 at the very low end, very, very low end. But I think 15, 16 at the top.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't see them being a 20-win team. I still don't see them being, solidly top 10. Where they're top 10, Noah's going to knock them off their spot. I don't think that that's going to happen. I could see them dropping to, an 11th or something.
Yeah.
Because there is something to Chengdu just being very volatile.
Yeah.
And hopefully Leave brings a lot more stability to, this whole roster. But I think Chengdu is still super chaotic.
Yeah, I think they're the perfect average but chaotic team. They're a perfectly average team. I can see them being in, the 15 to, 10 range, but never, pushing past that. And if they do push past that, congrats. That's something, and especially if we see more stability and less full-on chaos coming from them, that's going to be really useful.
But Chengdu is in a good spot. I don't want to get that wrong. But there is questions there. In terms of, where they are with the Chinese teams, though, I want to say they're second best because of the Shanghai Masters thing, but I don't completely think Shanghai Masters is, the be-all, end-all. It was a casual exhibition, and they did well, but I wonder how much Guangzhou and Hangzhou really cared about it.
Mm-hmm.
Or, even... Because we know Hangzhou, they take a while to get into things. Maybe they just didn't really feel things out. Yeah. And then Guangzhou is another thing where I still think that they were kind of reeling from what do we do now that Hoppa's gone, because he was such a big part of that team, that they got destroyed by the two teams with stability and then upgraded.
Mm-hmm.
But their DPS duo is, I think, number 2 when you look at Godspeed, Adara, or, Happy, Nero.
Yeah.
Leave and Jinbu is significantly better, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
And then moving on, we are going to talk about the Guangzhou Charge, of course, who we were just mentioning a little bit. One of Xavier's favorite teams all time.
Top 10 team.
They mirrored the record of the Chengdu Hunters last year, going 15-13 at their record, and then for their map record, they went 61-57-1. So also very similar, but to the more positive side.
They cut Hotba, Fraggy, Only Wish, Bishu, Rise, KYB. Rise, Only Wish only played 2 maps, and Bishu and Fraggy only played 1 map each.
So their only real release is Hotba.
So they're true. Or rest in peace, my guy, is Hotba. They signed Krong, an off tank from O2 Blast, WYA, or is it Waya?
Waya, probably.
Waya, a support, and then Neptuno, a support from Philly, which is one of my all-time favorite people to watch.
Neptuno's the dude.
But yeah, like we were saying, Neptuno is one of our favorite players.
Yeah, Neptuno, I always enjoyed watching, and I think he's part of the reason why I got more into different ways of playing Mercy, and I watched a lot of his videos on how to do call-outs and stuff based around Mercy and what his advice was that when they did when Mercy was very big in the meta in season 1, and they did like those before match, in between match, break time videos, and I don't know, he's one of the like supports that I think I've followed the most, because I also really like watching him when he plays Lucio, because he's like one of the better supports, and especially going on to Charge, he's used to mixed rosters and like those kind of things, so especially going on to the Charge, I think is like exactly what they need in a support set, like type of setting.
Yeah, I mean, Neptuno's probably better than Shara, so I think that that's a good upgrade in Neptuno. He's a well-liked dude. I'm sure he's going to get along with all the dudes on Guangzhou. It seems like a really good fit. And I like him against Shu, because Y is not going to play a lot, because Shu is a monster.
Mm-hmm.
But I like that Shu has another support partner.
This is the only team that I think has a support duo that's like prevalent. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, they have a good duo. I think Shu and Neptuno is really good. And I think that's like totally fine. But I really think the biggest question is whether Krong can be as good as Hoppa. Because the Charge had real struggle last season. They almost lost more maps than Shanghai lost, like in a row during their disastrous first season. They had a real hard time. They lost 5 straight 0-4
Right.
last season. And there were talks, you know, like when this podcast first started, we were trashing on Guangzhou.
Yes.
We were wondering, like, what is going on with this garbage team? But they ended the season super strong. They ended 8-2 in their last 10 games. And I think a large part of that was Hotba being really, really, really good.
Yes.
And, you know, obviously Shu is consistent. We don't need to worry about him. But it was like Happy and Nero really popped off. Eileen was on the Doomfist wave before everybody else was on the Doomfist wave,
That's
and that
true.
meant something.
Mm-hmm.
But Hotba was the anchor of this team. And I think losing Hotba is bigger than a lot of people are talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I see people like underrating Hotba or not really talking about how much of an impact he had. But I think Hotba was one of the most important people on this team. And losing him and having Krong come in, I think Krong has a lot to live up to.
Mm-hmm.
And he
Very
has
much so.
big shoes to fill, because if he doesn't produce as much as Hotba did, then I wonder if the Guangzhou Charge would do as well. It's a very, real question.
Mm-hmm.
But their DPS are disgusting.
Yeah.
Happy
That is true.
has Mr. 50% critical hit accuracy.
Yeah.
He obliterates the Surefour test.
Didn't they had a 5 straight 0-4 losing record during the season?
Yeah, that was really bad. Their DPS are disgusting. Happy 50% crit accuracy. Nero and Eileen, yet again, Eileen the OG Doomfist. Sinatra copied Eileen basically. Shout out. And I like that. I still like their DPS duo. Nero was really, really good. Happy is one of the top snipers in the league, I think.
Sure.
And Eileen, Doomfist God. So they have really good versatility, and it's one of those DPS lines where you really... The only reason a player is playing over another player is just specific map things or hero things. It's never a thing of oh, this player sucks, this player doesn't. And I like that. They don't have a player that sucks on their DPS line.
Yeah, that's true.
Nero, Happy, and Eileen all pop off and all have really, really highs. It's just, oh, on this map, Nero's better. Or on this map, oh, Happy's really good on this map.
And
I like that flexibility.
Yeah, it's the same with the Shock. But in the grand finale, you just saw, oh, these 2 maps, here's Sinatra, and then on these 2 maps, here's Architect. We're doing Bastion. And here's Doomfist. So it's I appreciate how...
Balanced their team is.
Yeah, balance their team is.
But here's another, it's another team with 1 tank for each role. 1 off tank Krong, 1 main tank Rio.
Yeah.
And yet again, man, is hella nervous because things switch up on him.
Mm-hmm.
Rio's been good though. The entire time Rio doesn't suck. But I think this is another Hotba thing. Hotba was so versatile and could do anything that hopefully Krong is as versatile. It's not like I've watched O2 Blast.
Yeah.
The only game I watch at O2 Blast is them getting destroyed. So I don't really know how good Homie can be.
Mm-hmm.
But big shoes to fill. But the Charge are very good. They're top 10. I don't care. I don't care what anyone says. I think that early season struggle was them just not really knowing what to do and not understanding goats,
And
not being good at goats.
And not being used to the pressures of performing like that.
But then once they start, saying, we're just going to play our way, and they start playing that Doomfist, they start messing around with, Pharah and stuff, and then once Stage 4 comes in, and everything starts clicking for them, and they're allowed to play what they're really good at, Happy's allowed to snipe, Nero's allowed to Pharah, and then Eileen's allowed to Fist, I think that a lot of these things really matter.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, so hopefully they can keep up that Stage 4 fire, Stage 3 fire, and don't go on a 0-5 streak again.
Mm-hmm.
Oof.
And I think they're fine. I think their record would be... This is stupid, it's like, oh, their record would be better if they didn't lose those games. But if they didn't have that just super bad...
streak,
I think a lot of people would look at them a lot better.
Yeah.
And I
yeah,
think
if
that
the losses
0-5
were less lined up.
Yeah, it was so unfortunate. You know? But I think their last two stages, the last half of the season showed that the first half of the season was kind of a fluke. And it was just a bad time for them, bad meta. They didn't figure things out. Once they figured things out and started playing their game and playing confidently, they're really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're top 10.
Definitely.
Keep in mind, number 9 or number 10, they're not 5. But they're top 10.
They're not 6 or 7.
Yeah, but they're 10. That's what matters. Top 10. Everybody likes round numbers.
Speaking of round numbers and 10s, the Huangzhou Spark went 17-10 last season with a 60, 52, and 4 map record. Fortunately, they can't be Paladins because they cut No Smite, but Taylor, you might want to talk about the revenge they're going to take. Oh wait, they can't. They cut him too.
Yeah, and then they signed... They lost to the Gladiators at the beginning of the playoffs. In loser's bracket, they defeated Seoul, Atlanta, and lost to Shock. Had good success in 6-1 stage 3 and 5-2 stage 2. So, I mean, they did something.
Yeah, they're actually really good, but I think that they're a team. It's kind of similar to the Gladiators, I think, or Seoul, where
they're slow. And
they're disappointing.
And
yeah,
it's disappointing.
They're really good, and then in the games where everybody's watching and a lot is on the line, they sometimes disappoint you.
New York in finals.
Yeah, I think the biggest example for me is when they played Vancouver and they choked on Rialto. That feels so Spark, where you look at their record and you're like, oh shit. They're really good. I mean, 17-10 is a great record.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you look at the season, they're putting up a couple win streaks. Their stage finals appearances, they weren't trash. They had a positive stage record. But then in the games that I remember from them are games where they disappoint me. And I think that that's worrying because you could beat average teams, you could beat bad teams, but when you come up against these great teams, what do?
Yeah.
And it feels like the Spark just push them, and the Spark are clearly a very good team, but I don't think they get over the hump quite the same way that Seoul couldn't get over that hump. And that's disappointing.
Shouldn't they have beaten the Vancouver Titans win streak before the Valiant did it?
Yes.
They could have done it, but they didn't because they choked, and I think that's, as you said, that's just, when I think of them, I think of their mistakes.
Yeah. And I think not signing anybody is interesting. I do
especially
I respect wanting to run it back, but also just sign somebody.
And after all the drama that happened around them last year too, with Crystal and stuff, you'd think that they would want to make an effort into being like, hey, we're getting dudes in to kind of replace these bads.
Yeah, but, you know...
You'd think they'd want some fresh air, yeah.
Yeah.
But really, I mean, their team is just like... I see them just being the exact same, you know? Obviously, it's the same players, but I really see their performances just kind of being the same. Really, the biggest X factor for me... Like, I don't think Godsby or Ottawa are, like, top DPS duo in the league at all. I don't think IDK and Bebe are top support duos in the league. I think IDK is cool, but I don't think they're top duos in the league or whatever. And this team kind of lives or dies by how good Gouchway can be. If Winston's meta, Gouchway is going to fuck. Because Gouchway got Rollstar simply off of his Winston.
His
Yes.
Winston.
It's stupidly good. However, from what I recall, his Orisa wasn't that good until he improved on Orisa. And obviously Gouchway is such a great player, he can pick up something, even though he's had some early struggles. Like, he could pick up on Orisa, like, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
But Winston is his thing. And hopefully Winston is meta, but if Winston's meta, it elevates this team up, like, maybe 2 wins off their last year record.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know, this roster is just fine. Like, I don't have a lot to say just because I feel like everything I've said about the Spark before just applies to this team. But the league is, like, slightly better.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the rest of the Chinese teams are slightly better. And I don't know. There's genuinely, like, not a lot of excitement for me with the Spark. I'm going to watch them because I do like Gouchway. I do think that they have fun games. But in terms of looking forward to the season and wondering what they're going to do, they're going to play good Overwatch.
Right.
They're going to they're going to be a playoff team. Do fine
They're
in the
not
playoffs.
They're
They're going to
not-
have, like, Gouchway be a, you know, all-star. It'd be kind of cool. But with all these Chinese teams, I think the Spark are the ones that I am least excited about.
Yeah, that's very fair.
I think they might get rocked a little by Shanghai. Oh, well, they did, but they're gonna get rocked by, like, Shanghai, probably Chengdu on a good day. I think that's their closest matchup. But, like, with who is in their division, including Seoul Dynasty, you have to think about, well, if Seoul Dynasty, Shanghai, and then Guangzhou are the top 3, as we've said before, like, with the Pacific division, then it's like, well, now you're fighting for your spot against Chengdu. And they're kind of in an LA Valiant, Dallas Fuel kind of.
You got some
Situation,
monsters in your
yeah.
division.
Yeah.
But the Spark, so Seoul was the gatekeepers of the Overwatch League last year. I feel like Spark are going to be the gatekeepers this year because they're not going to suck. They're going to win 16, 17, 18 games. They're going to be really good. They're going to beat up on teams that aren't ready for it. They're going to beat up on some teams like Philly, or they're going to beat up on some teams like Seoul that just might not gel like we want them to. But they're not going to beat up on your Vancouvers, your Shocks, you know, your Atlantas probably. But yeah, they're just very uninspiring.
Yeah. And
But they are, I do feel like they are the gatekeepers. If you beat the Spark, you're dope.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's a team that looks uninspiring if you just look at their record, but their record doesn't tell everything. Their record doesn't tell who they are. The Shanghai Dragons have gone 13-15 last season with a map record of 51-61-3. But the thing is, they, like, kind of picked it up towards the end.
Okay, like, how fucking dare you say that Shanghai isn't defined by their map history?
Okay, no, but I mean, like,
dare you?
I mean, like, their
say
record.
that their 48 game loss streak or whatever is why they're not known and beloved.
Listen. I'm saying it doesn't define who they are. It might define why they're loved, but it doesn't mean that they're gonna be bad.
Yeah, so excuse the rest of this podcast, because I'm about to overrate the fuck out of the Shanghai Dragons.
Okay,
Same.
before we overrate the fuck out of the Shanghai Dragons, they cut Koma, Gongju, Youngjin retired. They signed motherfucking Fleta,
The GOAT.
Lip, a DPS that Xavier's already said he's hyped about, Void from the Gladiators, Stand 1, main tank from Gladiators Legion, and Lee Jae-gon, which is a main support from Runaway.
Listen here, you nuggets. Can Shanghai be a top 5 team in this league? Yes. Alright, so this is the Spark are going to be the number 2 team in the league take. Are y'all ready? Shanghai could be top 5. I look at this roster and I'm like, yo, you guys are good.
Yeah.
The biggest issues for me, and this might, as I talk through this, they're more going to end up at like 7 or 8. But I think losing Gamzu is a giant deal. It's very similar to the Hotba loss, where Gamzu was a great main tank. And I'm not entirely sure if Stand 1 is going to be good enough to replace Gamzu. I think Gamzu is going to see, in Dallas, I think he's going to help that team kind of turn around. Because he's that good. He's just so reliable. He's never going to fuck up.
Mm-hmm.
But unlike a dude like Note, who's never going to fuck up but not really make plays for you, Gamzu is a playmaker as well. And I genuinely believe Gamzu's play really helped enable the ridiculousness that was the 3Ds, Ding, Diem, and Youngjin. And losing him is a really big deal. However, you do lose him, and you get Fleta. So there's balances here.
A new trio of D.
So there's balances here, but I think a lot of people understand how big losing Gamzu is, but until kind of we're in the mid-season part, and kind of we're in the dregs of the season and shit starts slowing down, losing Gamzu is going to be more evident, because I don't know a lot about Stand 1. Maybe he's a monster, but Gamzu is proven to be a top level tank.
Yeah, and I feel like one of the interesting things where you bring up now the mid-season slump, I think that's when we're going to kind of start returning to homestands, where it's like the second time to a location where it's all like, oh, here we go, this thing again. That's going to be kind of like...
The Valiant are going to lose again.
Oh, here we go. Or when you see a game where you're like, oh, this is going to be a very easy game, and even the players start feeling that. So it's like, I feel like I think it's going to be it's going to hurt Shanghai when they have to go up against Dallas. And have to go up against Gamzu. If by that point, Stand 1 hasn't made a solid showing that he is as strong as Gamzu.
Yeah, and I think it's disappointing too, because for a lot of the time, Gamzu was playing next to Youngjin, who is dope. Like, let's not get crazy. Youngjin is a badass.
He was a badass.
But a lot of the time, he was playing third DPS in their 3 DPS comps, and then he was playing weird off-tank kind of in their comps. And Gamzu never really played a lot with a super good off-tank kind of player.
Right.
And I was kind of looking forward to Gamzu messing around with the Void a little bit. But Gamzu's gone.
Rest in peace, Gamzu.
Yeah, but Stand 1 is cool. I like him. He was really cool in Shanghai Masters. And so obviously if that is any translation, it's whatever. But I don't know. I'm not entirely sure if the Shanghai Masters thing is evident of a lot. But what I am sure of is that this Fleta Lip Ding DM thing is fucking insane.
Yeah.
Right. And one, I'm going to watch every single Shanghai game.
Obviously.
Because of them. I think that they are genuinely nutty.
Mm-hmm.
And what really helps with that is the fact that you still have Luffy. And hopefully Lee Jae-gong is as good as Koma. Because Koma really was kind of the hero of that Shanghai run in Stage 3 playoffs. He was the reason Ding was able to just play far and not die.
Yeah.
Because Koma was keeping him alive. Koma kept everybody up. And Koma's another Gamzu-like player where this team is really going to miss him. But from what I've heard about Lee Jae-gong, he's really good.
Yeah.
Right.
I do feel like a good point with the Shanghai Masters is that it gave us far enough into the off season that we had a chance to see what everybody looks like at that point, And then it also gives them a chance to see, well, these are a majority of the teams we're going against, minus Seoul. So it gave them a chance to kind of be like, okay, so this is where we all are. This is what we need to push. This is what we need to change. This is what we need to improve on. And I think that's going to put all these teams kind of a step ahead if they take it as a learning experience. If they just take it as a hoo-hoo fun thing, then I can see, which I can only assume is like Chengdu being like, haha, this was fun, just because of how chaotic they are. But I think it's a good chance to see where they stand currently against each other, and then seeing, because a majority of the games are going to be against each other before they face people outside of their
Yeah, I mean, you play the teams of your division
league.
twice, so you're going to see Chengdu twice, you're going to see Guangzhou twice, you're going to see Seoul twice.
Right.
That's a lot of your games. Half of your games are basically against your opponents. But holy fucking shit, Ding, DM, Lip, and Fleta is so
insane.
Shanghai Masters, they just shat on everybody, right?
Yeah.
Off the back of this support line, and we know how good Ding and DM are. Ding, best far in the league, really good Sombra. DM, sniper. Fleta is everything.
Fleta is God.
Yes, he
Fleta
plays.
is love. Fleta is life.
He
Cut that.
plays.
Cut that out. Get that out of here. We leave that in the last decade.
He plays everything. Fleta is so good. And I think that what this team was lacking was DM is very good at what he does. And Ding is very good at what he does. But I do think that there is a limit to what you can do with those two, because their skill sets are very narrow.
Mm-hmm.
They're good at what they do, but they're not flex gods, And so I feel like you are limited to what you can run. And it worked when you could have 3 DPS out there, so you could have Youngjin disrupting things, Ding out here, DM out here. But as we saw in Stage 4, this shit don't really work as much, because now that you're in 2-2-2, if you're running Ding and DM, you're limited a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And Youngjin was kind of like that flex dude, but it's fucking Fleta that we're talking about.
Yeah.
I think Fleta opens this team up to a whole world of possibilities, because what you lacked in terms of Ding and DM were their specialists, and they are the best at what they try to do. Fleta can do everything. By the end of the stage last year, Fleta became a pretty good Mei. And he started off not that good, but he figured it out because Fleta's Fleta. Fleta's a great Genji, even though Genji's not in meta.
Right.
He can pick up whatever you need him to do. So if Ding is having troubles, if DM are having troubles, be like, yo, play what you're doing, and Fleta can play around that.
Exactly.
And Lip is another just, embarrassment of riches on, a San Francisco Shock level, where I watched Lip at that Shanghai Masters, and I was like, the Overwatch League needs to come right now, because I need to watch Lip play on the big stage, and I need Lip to have his moment where Twitter loses their mind over a play he does, because he's genuinely super good. Obviously, small sample size. I didn't watch Lip outside of that game, but from what I saw, and it's clear that people that know him understood the type of talent he is.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited for Shanghai, and I think that they, at the high end, top 5.
Yeah.
At the low end, 9, 10 range.
Mm-hmm. I think also because they were very generous with their signings out of all the Chinese teams. I think this comes from seniority in the league in general, the whole organization as a whole, knowing that it's very important to get these actual signings, because they didn't sign a lot of people before the season started last year, and then they slowly brought in people.
They basically just brought an entire team and were like, all right, we're cool. But they never,
But I think that's to be shown with some of these other Chinese teams where they were very reserved with their signings, and they were like, I want to keep this team right now, like Spark. Mm-hmm. It's like, I want to keep this team, and Chengdu was like, I want to keep this team, and then Guangzhou did very little also. It's like, this is the team. I need them to stay this team. And I feel like we saw that a lot with some other teams going into the second season, where they were like, this is our team. We can't change. We've already made these guys our team. Like, it'd be wrong for us to do that. But I think now, seeing so many teams sign going into the third season, I think they finally get like, oh yeah, this is really important that we do this. The teams that were very reluctant. And I think that's just coming from how new the rest of the Chinese teams are. They're kind of in that mindset where they're like, well, we have something that works right now. Let's not fuck it up.
Yeah.
And we know it's good, so let's not fuck it up. It's not like Boston, who thought they were good and didn't
just blow stuff up.
Yeah.
There's another thing that's weird, and I find myself doing it, and I think that a lot of other fans are going to find themselves doing it, is underrating Shanghai just because Shanghai had a historically bad Season 1, and their Season 2 didn't start off too hot. And I find myself doing it where...
Their map record does not define them. Truer words were never spoken by me.
Because I want to be like Shanghai's top 10, but in the back of my mind, the Shanghai Dragons name
is not top 10 material.
Yeah, it conjures this idea that they're not a top flight team, even though I look at their roster and I'm like, they're fucking good.
Yeah.
And they're better than a lot of teams in this league. So it's just like an interesting thing where, you know, you think of Shanghai, and I think that they just have a permanent underdog name.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they might be favorites going into this season.
They could literally be like the number one team going into playoffs, and people would be like, the underdogs.
Yeah, but like, can Shanghai beat
Can Shanghai pull it off?
Can they beat the 6th seed team? Like,
will they really go all the way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's just interesting with Shanghai, but the one thing that I'm kind of sad about is, so the Stage 3 Shanghai thing was the greatest shit I've ever seen in almost all of sports. That playoff run, defeating New York, then Vancouver, then the Shock in an incredible series, was great. And obviously they'll still have that magic because they are fan favorites. But with Shanghai kind of moving on and being a true playoff contender, championship contender, hopefully this year, I'm looking at the league right now and I'm thinking, who is going to have that moment?
Yeah.
Like, who's going to have the Shanghai moment of, oh my god, like, where did this come from? And I look at a lot of teams and I'm just like, I don't see a lot of these underdog teams having that Shanghai moment. I think the only team that can have that is Toronto. Because Toronto has so many doubters, but they also have a lot of fan favorites. So if Toronto comes out and goes hard,
I think
they're going to get a lot of... It's going to be a good moment, but I don't know if anybody has that underdog narrative that Shanghai had.
Yeah, I think Toronto is the only one that where if they have one of those amazing runs where it's going to actually mean something. Because, like, even thinking of other underdogs...
Like if London went off.
Yeah.
They would just be like, oh shit, like, cool.
London's back.
I don't even think
dudes.
Washington can have that kind of run where it's still like, oh my god, I can't believe it, because it's like you saw that already.
Yeah.
So it's like Toronto is the only one with that hope.
Yeah, I feel like Toronto or I think Houston also kind of has that pub of if they go crazy, it's going to be a really great moment to watch, and it's going to be one of those moments that we remember when the Overwatch League is dead in 2 years. It's going to be one of those moments we remember. Where it's like, damn, Houston went hard that one season.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, it's just the thing that I think about with Shanghai is who's going to be kind of the new Shanghai, because Shanghai has transcended Shanghai right now.
Yeah.
They're better. Yeah. They're better than being the Shanghai of the Overwatch League.
And
they're above that.
The only team that kind of has a spark of where I'm like, oh, I want you to do good is Washington. Like, Toronto, I'm hoping has the, like, Shanghai arc. But, like, Washington's the only other one where I'm like, I pity you guys so much that now that you did something insane, I'm like, oh, cool, yeah, you got this, guys. So Shanghai and Washington have the same vibe, I think, a fan looking at it. But I don't see Washington having that same, like, love that Shanghai gets. Because Shanghai is probably the most loved team in the entirety of the Overwatch League. Easily.
And Shanghai is on the #1 list. So on PC, there's the replay viewer. You can watch from like each player's perspective, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. I think Shanghai's my #1 team that I want to watch because of how just absurd their DPS line is. It's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, it's going to be very entertaining.
But Shanghai's they're the number one Chinese team.
They're the best.
Until, we listen back on this podcast and they're like 0-5 to open the season and everybody's panicking and the Guangzhou Charge are gods.
And I'm like,
Or all the Chinese teams suck and we don't know anything.
Mm-hmm.
Because they just didn't make any moves.
Right. But if we are wrong about anything we said today, you can catch our live reactions to that happening on our Twitter or Instagram at ScrapyardMedia. Of course, you can listen here for when we regret our decisions, anywhere you listen to podcasts, at ScrapyardMedia. And finally, come play games with us on Xbox or Steam at ScrapyardMedia. Have a good one. Be woke, don't be broke. Roll outro.